Good afternoon, Mr. Praveen. Thank you for taking out time and coming on this discussion and sharing your inputs, which would be very important for people belonging to this industry. And we quickly start with the first question that would be, what are the challenges you face in managing labor relations in the automotive space?
Thank you for that question, and it's a privilege and honor to be with you. Before we start this question, me answering this question, I would like to take you through a little background on how this question is relevant and what is the mindset behind the industry, especially with respect to automotive industry. What's the kind of mindset that generally is prevailing? Probably one of the biggest thing that we all struggle in general in any especially in the automotive industry is that we have a framework of in the society that we develop people's rights and human rights, employee rights, worker rights, and labor rights, employment laws and employment standards. We generally develop that framework, and our culture is very focused on the rights of the employer and the employees and workers in specific. But at the end of the day, I have noticed that the relationship at workplace doesn't actually run predominantly on the rights focus, entitlement focused way, though it looks on the prima facie that is the prevailing thought process. But in the end of the day, a relationship that is running on on every party getting their rights and entitlement doesn't really work. It is generally the psycho behind it is that what does that party get the interest met of their individual growth and development is hardly a conversation that happens during a employee employer relationship. So consequently what people is that everybody in the industry, because it is able managing the topic that we are talking about, labor relationships, is because predominantly people, both the employer and the employees, especially the workers, they always think about what do we get out of this relationship. And the problem ends in what we call is an adversarial issue that happens. It is more of predominantly designed to be adversary oriented. My rights versus your rights is the thought process what happens. So slowly that poisons the entire environment, and as a result both the party ends up trying to find out what is my right and how do I get that right. But just changing the mindset, if you have to really work on the managing the labor relation, the the most important factor in that is to invest time into judging what we deliver value to the organization as an employer, what do we deliver value to the workers. In the end of the day, if the conversation moves from that right focus to best interest focus, then managing the labor relationship becomes very easy. Now that's the mind the thought process behind this managing labor relation which I mentioned. But if you see that the labor industry is very the automotive industry is very labor intensive, very tough, volatile manpower, highly mobility, high turnover, the compliance of factory labor law, compensation, working environment, tougher internal controls, monitoring policies and systems becomes a big challenge to the leaders and the line managers, especially the plant level. So as a result, the understanding of the leaders and the HR managers are very process oriented, policy oriented. As a result, problem most of the problem gets in getting leads to union matters, safety matters, health matters, environment matter, and it all escalates into conflicts and unrest. So the main problem, if you really want to manage the labor relationship, there is a one process to be understood is that though you may have a lot of challenges in terms of shortage of labor during the weekends, salary after the immediately after the salary disbursement, festival seasons, every time there is a challenge on this. So the main process is to, if you really want to think about the managing labor relationship in automotive process, is that we need to move into a win-win situation where the leaders, the plant managers, the line managers have to think in the mutual interest of the organization, employer and employees. Then the situation will improve in terms of managing labor welfare.
Thank you so much for that response. Very helpful. Let's talk about the engineers and our floor managers. We've seen that there's a difference in age. There can be a difference in age. So, how do you train young engineers on handling shop floor managers, considering
Right.
this age difference there?
Yeah. So before we come to that answer to that question, why does it occur? That is very important. We need to understand why does this, this question of managing young, engineers and shop floor managers come into question. The young engineers, they come in from different economic and educational and cultural backgrounds. So as a result, they come with a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of eagerness to learn and develop. But the realities at the shop floor is very, very different. Shop floor, when the tire meets the road, the new young engineers who come in with all their educational degrees and stuff, they are shocked, scared and apprehensive, and sometimes they are lost in the environment. That is one of the major reasons. Second reason what I have found is that there is a big generation gap. The Gen Z have come with different values, goals, lifestyles, working styles, attitudes, different approaches, different perspectives. They have different priorities, hence the expectations what they come, and the realities what is on the shop floor is far distinct. Third, what they have learned in their technical background and the industry, and what is the industry expectations are quite different. Hence there is a big time mismatch on it. Now integrating them into the system always generally has this problem of scaring them off if you're not handling them in properly. So the most important thing what they have to do is two-faced. One is, the problem that has to be handled is mentoring these new joiners, new engineers when they come. Second is the second part of this problem to be can be solved by, you know educating the line managers, floor managers and the functional head how to handle them. So while we do this, first of all we have to talk about how these engineers can be mentored. How do we try to get them, slowly integrated in the system? Continuous communication, periodic interaction is one thing that can really help them. But for the onus, 80% of these challenges can be actually handled by the floor managers and functional heads if they are, trained to do that. But largely, most like I have seen in my experience, very few are actually good mentors. So most important, an HR and the organization leadership has to mentor these floor managers, educate them to build a supportive system, promote open door policies, bring more open communication, have periodic interactions with them, counseling the floor manager, teaching them how to be good mentors, enabling them to how to be a good coach to these young engineers, then promoting them with good collaborative and teamwork attitudes, understanding, helping them to understand what is the aspirations of these engineers, what will inspire them, what will motivate them. Understanding that could help. Also sufficient training should be provided to line managers, functional heads and the HODs under whom these young engineers will be spending time with. So giving them sufficient training how to mentor them will be important. And lastly, the most important is that senior management and HR should be directly involved in participating in the hiring, selection, and mentoring process. That will help getting the right people, mentoring them. Once the ownership is given to the HODs to make and given them the rights and the accountability to hire people of their choice, they generally mentor them very well. That is what I have found. Besides that, lastly but not the least, HR has to be the guide, mentor, and they should spend time with the HODs and the young engineers periodically to understand what are their aspirations, what are their grievances and concerns. And lastly but not the least, establish a good mentoring system, grievance and concern resolution mechanism in the system. It will help an organization for a very smooth integration of the young engineers into the system.
Thank you so much for that response. It was very, very knowledgeable to have this understanding of how really things work and how it can help the engineers in growing. And that brings us to our very next question. is if they have the right set of mentors and if they are able to grow, what is there? What are the challenges do you see these engineers would have when they climb the ladder in the manufacturing setting?
Yeah, this is very pertinent question, and I have seen this invariably happening. What the engineers who come in with a lot of ambitions and dreams in their eyes, when they hit on the real day-to-day working, what are the challenges they face? First thing we need to understand, when these when they move from a conceptual world to the real world, the realities are very different. Lot of emotional elements are there at both their side and at the same time with the line managers, supervisors on the shop floor. And in the production side, when these engineers are generally coming into on the production side, especially in the automobile engineering, we have a lot of mechanical engineers whom do we have. So when we have seen them, when they come into the organization, they come with a lot of educational, they are very young, they know the their conceptual side of the entire plant, on equipments, all the technical aspect is but they are absolutely not prepared for the tough working environment that they are entail. They come from a very protected and comfortable environment, and suddenly they are put into the high pressure jobs, and especially at the shop floor, or if it is on the some engineers when who takes into the production line at the automotive, most of them go for the production. Very few I've seen them preferring a sales and marketing. But even if they are on the sales and marketing, I've seen them getting into the market, because the first job is generally very tough. They are required to go out in the marketplace, they need to go to the dealers, they need to go to the distributors. Some of them are sent to the rural areas. Some of them have some very challenging frontiers they have sent to. Some of them at the shop floor, they are also they come directly in contact with the workers. And chances are that it could be a very hostile situation. It's never, see, at an plant level, the environment is very stressful generally because it's all production driven, product target driven. You have so many chassis to be completed with it's in the first shift, second shift. So it's a high pressure job. So when these guys they come into it and they are not used to that kind of moving out from a comfortable zone and suddenly into a tough zone, handling different type of toxic behaviors of various senior people, it's very difficult. Second thing, they are also faced with the safety issues at the plant level. Some of the equipments are maybe a little old, or they are not well protected. So these are also another challenges. When these guys they see accidents, they see things that they are not used to see. So that's could be very challenging and puts a lot of pressure on them, they say. Second, also getting a job, I have seen another aspect of challenge in the engineers is that sometimes they do not get a job of their liking, which is not their interest. Sometimes when we go for campus hiring, we take a lot of engineers, hire a lot of engineers, but the job allocation sometimes could not be in alignment to that. So I have seen in sometimes people, engineers joining the company with a lot of hopes that they will get a job of their liking, and then eventually they don't get it, and some of them move out to some other areas. So that is one thing. At the career front, communication is also very big challenge. They are in the engineering students, the teaching methodology is not something very they are not trained to handle communication, emotional issues. So they may be very good in knowing the technical aspect of the plant, but the emotional aspect, the human relationship aspect, or they are not trained. So that comes, coping up with that kind of thing becomes a problem. Second, performance are expectations would be high with engineers, because they are generally hired with a certain level of CTCs. So there could be an mounting pressure on performance. So that's one thing I have seen. Then they are not used to rejections, criticisms. They are not they are not prepared to handle that. So that is one challenge I've seen in engineers, that they face sometimes emotional outbursts. They have some emotional challenges which happens when handling with human relationship. Then I have seen that if their interest is not there in a particular job, then the job transition to move to new department, new environment, upgrading their skills become a challenge to them. Relationship with the line manager and their supervisors, their HODs, is a challenge, because this is a generation Z, which is, whose actually traits are far different from generation X and baby bloomers, or millenniums. So there is a little difference in on integrating them. So, and females have a special a different type of challenge. Females, for them, compared to men, treatment is a little different. Tougher environments, tougher colleagues, and tough bosses. So that makes a little challenge for them. Language sometimes becomes a problem. So engineers, I have noticed that there is also difference between engineering schools graduates and management school graduates. So that also is a challenge. So engineers have their own bunch of problems, but none of these problems are not that they cannot achieve or they cannot overcome. A little mentoring, little kind of counseling and coaching will definitely help them to overlook that problems.
Thank you so much for that response. I hear a lot of mentoring, teaching, learning words where would be very helpful to all of these engineers to understand and develop their skills and going ahead using them in their day to day activities. Um, that also brings us to the learning and development area, right? So, how do you think, or what do you think are the biggest challenges faced by L&D professionals today, and how do you see these challenges evolving in the future?
Okay. So the biggest challenge I have seen in learning and development professionals is that creating a learning and development culture within the organization is the biggest challenge. Most of the organizations today, bearing a few, treat training as an expense, not as an investment, and the focus is generally very on the sidelines. So learning and development professionals have a tough time creating that culture. Second, they have a problem at measuring the effectiveness of that training program, and justifying and to the business how effective, and translating that learning into the job front is one challenge that I have seen learning and development professionals having a tough time. Showing the ROI of the training is another issue which they are to measure it, to show its ROI has been a challenge. Third thing is to I've seen at the training program to keep the learners engaged, keeping them engaged, keeping them motivated throughout the training program. There is a beautiful analogy that I have to see that in the learning and development vertical. There is a set of penguins that went out for training, and they had a 3-day workshop, these penguins, and they were the goal of the training was to enable them to fly higher. So on the first day, the penguins flew from the first floor of one building to the second floor of the second building. Second day, they again flew from the third floor to the fourth floor, and on the third day again they flew from the terrace of one building to another. But on the fourth day, when they left the venue of the training program and went to their workplace, they started walking as they were doing before the first day of the training program. So I have seen that effectiveness of training program, unless the learners are completely engrossed and know the give their 100% for the training, and the end of the training, the effectiveness of the training is very, very limited. Transfer of knowledge from and learning to the workplace is something that still is yet to be proved in a really measurable terms. But I have seen, nevertheless, training is not something that can be negotiated, I feel. The organizations who have maintained their standards and maintain their budgets for training even after COVID has shown result. After the COVID, I have noticed that significant number of companies have curtailed their learning and developing budget, and still it is not caught up with the times before the COVID times. So I think it is a challenge, but still, one of the greatest challenge I have seen is in an organization that out of 100 people, only 5 or 6 people in an organization would be really, really keen to have more training programs. And sometimes trainings has to be thrusted on employee rather than they are wanting to have such training programs. And many people are there still who are yet to daily upgrade them skill, upskill themselves, and reskill themselves is a big challenge to many people that I have seen.
Thank you so much for that answer, sir. Let's talk about our next next question for discussion. So, how do you balance the need to provide immediate job relevant training with the need to develop employee long term career prospects?
Right. See, first of all, thing, let me tell you, if learning and and development has to be very effective, um, um, not only for the organization, but it is for the employees. First of all, every single person should understand that unless you learn and develop, you will never be able to actually make a success story of your career. It is very difficult. Many people, once their certification, once their qualifications, or their degrees, or academic careers are over, very few people are people who go out, take up certification, do some learning and development to develop their careers. So this desire of learning and development should be actually a part of any individual's passion. If that is not a part of their passion, no amount of external influence can actually help that person. So there are people who do not do a formal training program, but they who spend every day in their at 1 hour, 2 hours only to develop themselves, learn something new, and grow.